are when we actually are filing habitual truancy with the county. The process for this is actually sending the parents a letter saying we're filing truancy with the county, as well as asking them for a meeting so we can discuss this, and then the county pursues support measures. Truancy tickets are issued when a student misses multiple days of school and other interventions have not been successful. They're also issued at the high school when a student misses a Saturday detention. We try to give them that sort of 2 strikes policy, so if they miss one, we have that conversation and say, okay, one last chance, and then that truancy ticket would be issued. Tardies at the elementary schools are when a student arrives late to school, so after 8:40. At ASA, that's just arriving late after 7:30. At high school, we have varied start times for our students. 9th and 10th graders need to be there for resource in the morning. 11th and 12th only need to be there if they're requested for resource. Some of our students have free periods at different points in the day. So tardies at the high school are when you're less than 15 minutes late to any class. Once they reach that 15-minute threshold, they are then marked absent. So just your attendance vocab. I understand now that it was because I have your laptop and it's not plugged into the, going through it. When we talk about attendance tiers of support and intervention, tier 1.5 would be those 5 absences or 3 tardies from class. 10 absences would create a tier 2 level intervention. You can see our interventions listed there. And a tier 3 would be 15 absences or 20 plus absences. We have 2 separate columns there just because at 15 absences, we're really still trying to take that supportive approach, trying to, if a student has a medical reason, facilitate some new systems for that family and that student so that they don't then have that additional barrier being provided, which is school. We don't want school to ever be a barrier. But at 20 plus absences with no documentation, then we would move into that truancy with the county sort of measure. These are applicable across all 4 buildings within the district. Now we're going to break it down building by building. We discussed that we need an updated high school photo. We'll work on that. Adam Ebley, the interim associate principal at the high school, who's filling in for Emily Hansen while she's out on maternity leave, will be providing the high school data.
Hello, everyone. So just looking at the attendance for the first semester, we had a 95.2% attendance rate. We had 99 students, or 11.5% of our students, who were chronically absent. Again, chronically absent was missing 9 days or more. That is an improvement from last year compared to the 16% from 24-25 in that first semester. We had 2 students with truancy cases and we had 6 truancy tickets. Looking at our tardies, we had 999 tardies that were excused in the first semester and 649 unexcused in the first semester. That's right around 60% of our tardies were in resource and first hour for the excused and unexcused, so that morning time when the kids are coming to school, maybe missing the bus, getting stuck by the train, different things that may happen there. Some of those interventions that we have for our letters, like Jane had said earlier, if a student hits that threshold of 15 days or more, then they have the medical only letters, meaning that they need a medical letter so they're letters, the 10-day letters and the medical only letters were right around the same. We also have creations of contracts for students to try to help them get to school as one of our interventions. Go over that next path data and kind of look for those students who are at risk or some risk and kind of proactively set up minor and 276 being those major. Looking at the minor administrators step in and all of our referrals, we have a really high are technology based or personal look at it and the whole scope here of throughout the whole school of all the different referrals, you'll see the two red bars are the
the word referral as how?
when a student is referred for any discipline or any absences that depending on.
So it's coming from where? It's coming from and to.
It's coming from teachers or administrators.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just real quick, if I could chime in, with the personal tech, that is just based on the student handbook language and changes that we've made for this school year. So that's not to say that students are abusing their personal technology or cell phones are out all the time. That's just teachers following the protocol we put in place. So that, I can't read that number, but that 75% or 35% for personal tech that we had there, that is strictly a student had a cell phone out in class, a teacher confiscated it, it got written up that way. It becomes a major when the student has 2 personal tech referrals, so 2 times their phone has been out. But that's not to say these students are misbehaving with tech beyond having it out per our new handbook. So I think we're seeing a bit of an adjustment period here with that.
So the number is 83. Do you see that, was it higher in the beginning of the year and it's come down?
The first referrals, so those minor personal texts early in the year. But now we're reaching the major category more than anything. Way fewer minors.
Be are these big and the other technology
Out of school suspensions is incredibly
Yeah.
incredibly low. I'll give you a perspective. And I think back in the day we used to be a little bit more suspension heavy, I would say, but I remember my first year here as AP in 2001, 2002 with several hundred less students, 150 suspensions that year. So to have 12 suspensions out of school in March with almost 900 students that's an incredibly low suspension rate, which is great.
Thank you.
Must be, well, you want some credit, Brian Sniff? Knock on. Knock on wood. Just acknowledging you guys are doing great work.
So our
want me
expulsion,
to
pre-expulsion rates, we have currently 13 students on pre-expulsion. One of those students graduated at semester. 31% of our students are participating in off-site learning. We have 61% of our students, of the students are males, and the same percentage have support plans, IEPs, or 504s. And at this point, or in first semester, there were no students that were expelled.
Yeah,
Last
that's
slide
a
for the
nice
high
trend.
school is just talking about the behavior interventions and supports that we have in place. It was really nice that Anna and Maura in their student spotlight actually talked about some of these supports that we have in place and how they're really helping people here at the high school. The first support we offer is just those proactive meetings and phone calls with parents or guardians. We are constantly engaged with families as often as possible, whether it be that phone call, positive touch point email home, or just, if we notice someone walking into the building, we have a phenomenal attendance secretary, Paula Schultz, who provides that immediate touch point where someone might look a little down today, and she'll let one of us know immediately so we can make sure that we're touching base with them. As Anna said, the United Way Empowering Minds grant work that's being done by Allie Malini and our Student Services Department is absolutely phenomenal. This is a grant that is just fostering positivity, mental well-being in our students and our staff. We're also utilizing community resources such as detour and U-turn or art classes for any AODA concerns. Releases of information for any medical needs are occurring, like I talked about earlier with regard to attendance. We partner with Lighthouse for family supports, whether those be financial or for mental health. Review future ready skills and incidents frequently. So Adam talked about how we have those weekly student services meetings. We are constantly monitoring our students' future ready skills throughout those meetings and ensuring that we're celebrating strong future ready skills with that implementation of the Dean's List and supporting students with silent mentorship, as well as some new check-in, check-out policies that we're using for those who might be struggling a little bit more with those future ready skills. NextPath has been an excellent tool in those weekly student services meetings to just make sure that we're intervening at the first sign of trouble. Our students who have some risk for attendance, Michelle Davison has met with every single one of them based on NextPath data that we've collected to make sure that they have that touch point at school, and we're just getting some of that initial information about why they're struggling with attendance. Including support staff in meetings and creation of plans, we really take that team approach. None of us are making a decision on our own. We're ensuring that we have multiple voices at that table, including the student's voice. By high school especially, they have the most critical voice in these conversations. And speaking of that high schooler and their critical voice, that mentorship program that we've initiated as students come over from the middle school, just making sure that we see there's a physical connection between these buildings. Let's continue to instill that leadership and connection as students start their freshman year here. So we've got some great upperclassmen leaders who are helping with that as well. And now Paul Bursai with Asa Clark data.
All right, thank you all. Appreciate you taking the time with us here tonight. So we'll start with our attendance piece here. And if you look over the last 5 years, our attendance rate has had a range of 0.3 over those years. So very, very consistent and a high level. A little more specific information here. You'll look at the chronically absent, 10% absence rate or above, that 8.5% of all students, so a pretty low number there. Those numbers for the grades are all within like 3 students of the numbers last year. We don't have any truancy cases at this point, although as of now that might look a little different, and no truancy tickets still to this point. The vast majority of our unexcused tardies are in that first period, so our students arriving after 7:30. Once students get in the building, they do a pretty good job of getting to class on time, but that first period is something that is a focal point for us, and Mr. Posick does a really good job of managing that, so grateful to have him there. Jane already mentioned it, but I do want to mention NextPath. NextPath has been a humongous leap in terms of us accessing and being able to analyze data. So compared to the data systems that we've had in the past, NextPath has been super helpful, not only for our MTSS once a week with our office student services staff, but also in our student support team meetings with house teams throughout the different grades. So bi-weekly, we meet with those student support teams. Our first quarter of the year, we meet weekly with them just to sort of ensure we've got a stronger net underneath student challenges that we might find early on. Lighthouse was also mentioned. I want to give a big shout out to Lighthouse. Lighthouse has been, there's a woman named Karen, I can't think of her last name, Karen K. She should be nominated. She's been phenomenal. She's done a really good job of taking student situations and serving as a liaison to connect them with services that are available. Trying to find mental health support for adolescents is a real challenge, and she's had a knack for connecting students with support. So we're grateful for their help, and we've tried to overutilize her, if anything. And then as you go down the list here, those attendance meetings and home visits are decreasing in their
Paul,
useful. Yep.
what is Lighthouse exactly?
Yeah, so Lighthouse is an organization that offers mental health support. So NAMI, are you familiar with NAMI? So Lighthouse is like I want to say like a sub entity of NAMI. And Karen, I think this is maybe her first or second year in this role, and I'm thankful that we got connected with her because I can think of at least 5 cases off the top of my head who have benefited significantly from her connecting them with outside resources. So that's been a real help for us, real benefit.
So is she trying to match based on need versus availability, or is it really about availability, or both?
Both, right?
Both,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah. So she has a real keen understanding of what needs are, and then being able to match those needs with organizations who have supports. Or like I have an adolescent male who has X, Y, and Z challenge. I need to find I need to find somebody who specializes in adolescent male challenge or whatever, something like that, right? So there's a lot of specificity in the connections that she's making based on student need.
Right.
So I appreciate that question. As far as attendance letters, you can see from last year to this year, there's a decrease in most of them. We have a couple of challenging medical cases that have presented, I guess, challenge for us, but working through those. But happy to see that most of the rest of those letters have declined over the first semester. If you look at our discipline incidents over the last couple of years here, boy, 2023 looked to be a bit of a challenge, but not too far up or too far down. January has been a good month for us this year. So September is a little bit of a honeymoon, and then it's interesting when you think about 6th graders specifically because they come in not knowing what's really going on, and as kind of like physically and emotionally little kids, and they grow and develop, and when you're able to lay some foundational groundwork with them in terms of what expectations are, it really does make a difference, and you start to see a pretty significant decline in the vast majority of them pretty quickly. So they're much more moldable and in trying to help with those behaviors. As far as disciplinary infractions overall, so Adam already kind of defined the difference between a major and a minor referral. The primary difference is that minor referral is classroom managed and that major referral becomes office managed. And so the numbers haven't changed overall dramatically, whether you're talking about minor or major or total over the last couple of years here. It has declined a little bit, and we're under that 300 mark for the first semester this year. So we're excited to see that incremental decline. I really tried to rack my brain about this one because I wouldn't have expected this when I first started looking through here. So our 8th grade really has the most referrals, as you see here, but the vast majority of those are minor incidents. And you'll notice that our 6th grade actually has the most major incidents. So that mostly has to do with physical behavior in 6th grade, and most of that has to do with Pizzo. Recess, correct.
Yeah.
So trying to just be
recess
more
issues.
proactive about planning around recess time and to ensure that there's safety for students. If I could, and what we're looking at is like, honestly, it's the competitive spirit of 6th grade boys that we're really trying to manage in that realm. So trying to create new games. We had a lit crew member out there trying to serve as a mentor at one point in time. And so trying to be creative with what we can do with trying to make connections for those boys to make better decisions.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many times you have to remind 6th grade boys that tackle football is not allowed.
And when you talk to them, they're very well aware.
Yeah,
It's
they know.
the juices get a hold of them when they're out there. So anyway, not to make light of it, it's serious and it's something we take seriously. And so we're trying to ensure that they're making safe decisions when they're outside. Just a breakdown of what you see as far as the types of referrals and a lot of the, like minor defiance and disrespect. We do ask teachers to try to record anything that they're communicating home about. For the most part, our first step is to communicate home, but if they have to go any step past that, then they're recording that. And that defiance and disrespect is that. And honestly, the defiance, disrespect, and disruption could kind of be either or. So as far as like, why is that one higher than that one? They get jumbled a little bit. But those are our two highest ones. As far as minor technology, I think it's important to note relative to high school, as Adam said, sixth graders and seventh graders could not access their phone at any point in time. Eighth graders could access their phone at lunchtime, and so we really haven't had a significant issue. Students have been very compliant with that rule, and we've been happy to see that. I was a little concerned about what that might look like the first month of school, and they've done a great job adhering to the policy. This is just a comparison of last year versus this year. Nothing that really jumps off the page here from my perspective. That minor technology one, believe it or not, went down, so that's interesting to note. But again, nothing that is significant there. Out of school suspensions, less this year. When you look at this, it's interesting to think our male students are suspended at a higher rate than our female students. That does track with years past. 76% of our suspensions are students with IEPs, which is a significant uptick from years past. That does not track from the past couple of years here, so something we're interested in. And when you look by grade, that sixth grade accounts for about half of those suspensions. And there's been pretty significant steps taken in a couple of different cases, and we've seen, I wish I could share anecdotes about individuals because there are some real changes that we've seen in behavior in a positive way for a number of students.
Paul, is sixth grade typically the higher one, or is this particular sixth grade class presenting challenges?
This is my second time around. I don't have data up here, unfortunately, to compare that. I would say that early on, there were pretty significant challenges with our sixth grade group. But when you go back to the referral data, eighth grade has more referrals written. And so that was the part that surprised me a little bit when you amassed them over the months. And so I think that goes back to the moldability and just their ability to be impacted by expectations and responses.
Okay.
So. We talked about bus behavior as well. This is very similar. The only thing I would add is that my goal at the middle school, we don't have a ton of referrals. There's 13 in total. 10 of them are sixth grade, 2 at the seventh grade and 1 at the eighth grade level. My goal is, with this low number, is to try and close the loop in person with the bus driver. Once in a while, I'll get back with Jamie, who's done a phenomenal job at turning video around this year relative to years past. I want to give Jamie McIntosh a shout out. And Sheila as well. So it's been great working with them, but always trying to close the loop with individual bus drivers so they have a sense of what's going on. Restorative practice is a big part of this. I want kids connecting with bus drivers, and so when I go out, my goal is to ensure that student has connected with that bus driver and made it right with them. So that's always my goal with individual drivers. But the referral data as a whole was not overly
Can I clarify what you just said?
Yep.
So you said, do you physically then contact bus driver and?
I try to walk out to the bus and talk to the bus driver. That's the goal.
Okay.
Yep. It doesn't happen every time, but it happens probably 90% of the time, I would say.
And you do that because?
Because the personal connection is important. They need to know that we have their back. We need to know that they are following through with the expectations that we have in the school, and that whatever happens, whatever our expectations are at school, need to be the same as what's on the bus. And so I think everybody knows that there's a level of expectation and accountability to behavior on the bus. So thank you for probing that a little bit further. There are not any pre-expulsions or expulsions at this time, so we're happy to see that. Again, I can think of a couple students who might have been tracking that direction at one point in time, and they've been, to their credit, very responsive. And I can think of a couple case managers who have gone above and beyond and made a significant impact on a couple of students' behaviors as well. I won't talk about all of these, but Character Strong continues to be something that we lean on quite a bit. There's a lot of pre-made materials in Character Strong that are really useful for us. Those class meetings happen twice a year where we connect an auditorium with each grade level students. Future Ready lessons, I think, are a big part of our proactive programming. So every Monday, every student in the building gets a Future Ready lesson. They range anything from social emotional learning to bullying to relational sorts of things, career ready sorts of things, career exploration. So that's a big part of our student learning that goes above and beyond the academic piece. Restorative conferences in the office, they take a little bit more time, but it is so worthwhile in terms of trying to respond to bullying, respond to conflict among young people. When they can sit there in a closed environment with a facilitator and talk it out and own their actions and take responsibility and apologize for their actions, that to me is probably our most successful intervention. So
Can I
wanna
just,
make sure I highlight that.
I just want to jump in and comment there because I think, and the board hears about this sometimes, there's some perceptions, there's perceptions and there's reality. And, you know, as I'm looking at this data just from the middle and the high school, we have far less serious behavior than we've ever had, far less. Now, we live in a world of social media. If anything happens, it's all spun up all over the place, and we hear a ton about it. I gotta just tell you, this data is incredibly low in terms of significant behaviors. We haven't had a serious concern for an expulsion
I know. What are you saying?
And-
Don't go there.
literally going on 2 years. I mean, I've had, it is very encouraging. And so when you hear about MTSS and you hear about SEL stuff and you hear about Character Strong and you hear about social work and school psychs and all the efforts that are going on and restorative practices, they make a difference. Sometimes the perception is that this is soft and kids don't get consequences. It's absolutely false. These kids get consequences when they violate school rules. It's very consistent. The fact of the matter is, and I just have to get on my soapbox here a little bit, so just permit me if you will. We're here to teach kids, and that includes teaching them the right way to behave. And it's about learning. It's not about, you know, it is a really bad, or bad is the wrong word, a very limited tool for getting kids to learn is consequences. It is an important tool. I very much believe in consequences, but we do not punish kids into learning to change their behavior. That does not do it in and of itself. And sometimes I think that's the perception. So I just wanted to take this opportunity with what Paul was talking about. It takes a lot more work. It's really easy to give detentions. It's really easy to suspend kids. It's really easy to give them citations. We can do that till we're blue in the face. And we used to do it a ton. So when I gave an example of 150 suspensions when we had like 620 kids when I was AP here, that's what we did. We didn't have MTSS. We didn't have as many counselors. We didn't have social work. We didn't have these kinds of approaches. And now what we're seeing is instead of kids being out of school so much because we're just sending them home or spending, you know, their Saturdays in detention, you know, we would have 60, 70, 80 kids sitting in Saturday detentions back in the day, right? So, and a lot of truancy citations. So instead of fining kids, suspending kids, we're doing actually the harder work and trying to help them learn. And it's, I mean, this data clearly shows that despite I think what sometimes the perception is what's going on with kids these days. Now, we are seeing stuff, and we'll hear about it at the elementary, behaviors that we didn't used to see nearly as much with some of the really aggressive, and again, it's a small percentage. But when you look at this middle and high school data, the incidence of significant behaviors are far lower than they used to be. So, all right, I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you. The phrase I would add to all that, Mike, is repairing the harm, right? Like that's what this is about when you sit down with 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids. It's about taking responsibility and fixing it with other people. So that's a big part
And
of
I
that.
think, like, to jump in, Paul, like, that includes the teacher as well. If a student's misbehaving in the classroom, real easy for that student to end up down in the office to have Paul issue a consequence or work with that student. But a lot of times in the past, that's where it stopped. Like, the important part is that, like, there was harm done in the classroom. There was a disagreement between the adult and the student that resulted in that, like, they have to work it out too, because that student at some point is gonna be back in that classroom, and that takes time.
I appreciate that.
Paul, before you go on, I have a quick question. So PHS mentors, can you talk a little bit about that and who or how do they get picked to be a mentor with these middle school students?
Yeah, so Jane should talk a little bit about mentorship. It's not like individual, but that's a huge part of this. And I would say that it's a little bit organic. We've tried to systematize it a little bit. I would say Lit Crew folks. So shout out to Dave Zendler again. There's a group of 10 to 12 students per semester who do a lot of work in the middle school, whether that's individuals or whether that's in a classroom. There's a ton of help there. And then the other piece is, it's been nice in my 2 years, knowing a lot of students here, seeing how this young man or young woman is, thinking like, I know a student who, so I'll get like where our student services will get the list of volunteers, and we'll try and like pinpoint and find people who are matches. And there's a couple of like really like neat success stories there. It's pretty organic though. It's not like systematized on like large scale volume though, yet. So.
But I mean, it's another good advantage that we have in terms of being able to have our high school and middle school as closely together, right?
And some
So-
really unique cases too.
Yeah.
So
Before you go too far, could you, I think we've got enough people here who would know this. What is the current percentage of our student body that's on mental health drugs?
I wouldn't be able to know that because it's not my right to know that information.
We don't know the percentage of students in this school that are on drugs, on mental health drugs?
Is the family's wishes
Well,
to share that? We don't keep that.
Right, I mean, if that's shared, we would be aware, but that's their personal information. They don't have to share any of that. If they're on prescription medication, would be HIPAA protected, that's
It's
private.
confidential health information.
We do not know, then, the number of students in this school who are currently being mentally health
Nobody
medicated.
in any school district knows that.
So you have no idea really what's causing this, because
Well,
you
I
don't
have
know what the drugs,
32 years of experience of working in middle schools.
you don't
and
know what the drug
I have
profile
32
is.
years in middle schools and high schools working with students and knowing that this data is distinctly different, and knowing that the difference being that these programs are in place because kids have been on medication for the last 30 years. So yes, I can have a very strong inference based on what's happening and draw a very strong correlation to the things that are happening, that this is having a very positive impact.
Last piece here is our wellness center, so I want to give a big shout out to our school counselors, Brianna Rimber and Allison Prather, who run that. Continue to have really positive data in terms of proactive check-ins for students who I might see in the office, from a discipline standpoint, are finding their way there to regulate and get back to class in a less consequence-driven path. So we appreciate that work.
Paul, what's your reference to check-in, check-out? Is that if they check in, check out of a class?
No, so that's an MTSS structure. So
Oh.
it kind of that and the daily behavior report card are two elements that we are probably our most highly effective and highly used tier 1.5 to MTSS structure. So it's about checking in with somebody at the beginning and end of the day, and what behaviors look like throughout the day. So we find that personal connection for the check-in, check-out is really successful.
So is it a teacher? Is it someone on?
It depends. It depends
Just
on the
depends.
connection the student
Sure.
has in the building. We got to sort of balance availability and capacity with connection. So we try and
Okay.
match students individually based on their case.
Okay.
I just want to add, just to build off of what Mike was saying, it really is the culture. It is our staff taking a personal interest in students and wanting to work with them when there's a behavioral issue, so that we're seeing no pre-expulsions or expulsions at Asa Clark, and lower numbers at the high school. I mean, I remember when I first came on the board, the numbers of expulsions that we dealt with. And I really just think it's just this new culture where our staff is really personally taking on the responsibility of working with these kids one-on-one to just really make them better people.
Thank you for that. I would say our house structure is a big part of that too, right? Those really, really tight and close connections between, a group of 3 teachers and a smaller group of students. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm not going to go through this a whole lot, but these are just examples. We could spend more time. The thing I guess I would highlight here is the intentionality of making learning visible for this developmental level of students. So when you look up there, most of these things, size of the problem, types of behavior, feelings wheel, discussion stems, I statements, these are all models that they can use to identify their emotions, to speak to another student, to recognize that maybe this thing that's actually a glitch is not this huge issue. I worked in the types of behavior thing today. I asked a student, what do you call this? My family thought it was bullying, but I really think it's just mean behavior. Why? This. Okay, that's a really good talking point for a family to be able to understand the difference between what that looks like. And so these thinking structures have been really positive for us. We also, our parent advisory, that link down there, if you were to go to that, that was a learning activity we did with our parent advisory group. It was a day in the life of a hypothetical student, or a week in the life of a hypothetical middle school student. And so, like, this happened, this is the response. This happened, this is the response. This is the proactive structure in place for this. So that would be a cool thing if you wanted to know more about what that could look like, to click that and take a look. And that's that.
And I want to commend Cady and Paul, because they established that parent advisory group, where they ultimately reached out and asked parents who were interested if they wanted to. Is it once a month, Paul, or what's your frequency that you meet with them?
Every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks, they meet with a group of parents, and ultimately you guys just talk about different middle school issues, correct?
And they self-assessed on what they want to know most about, and so social emotional learning was one of the top things, and so that's why that was one of our topics this year.
Hello, Lexi.
Hi, everyone. Okay, moving on to elementary. Okay, here is our annual attendance rates for the past few years. So you can see here that we've increased a little bit, which is great. Overall, we're sitting at 95.8. So looking at 7.3% of those students who are chronically absent, so missing 10% or more of school days this year. We have 0 truancy that we have filed, and we have 5 families that we have had to communicate in regards to being frequently tardy. 3 of those families are open enrolled in the district. Okay, so some attendance trends that we are seeing. Like I said, we're looking at that 7.3% of students, so missing 10% or more of their school day. Definitely at the elementary level, a big thing that we always take into account is our students are not in charge of getting themselves to school. So oftentimes it's our families who we have to have conversations with and figure out what the barriers are. We have seen definitely, especially since this is the first semester of data, a ton of illnesses. I know my family, my kids have experienced influenza A, influenza B, ear infections every other week, right? That's like my biggest fear of having baby number 4 is like, will I have enough sick time? So definitely a ton of just illnesses in the winter months, which we expect. I think one of the other bigger trends that we are seeing and having conversations about is the mental health and school avoidance piece. Specifically, we're looking at grade 5 and noticing some big trends with those students in particular. So similar to what the high school and ASA shared, that we have a weekly student services meeting on Thursdays, which includes myself, Christy Johnson, the principal, our school social worker, school psych, school counselor. So we all get together and we talk about any students that we're concerned about. Oftentimes these are students who we have some attendance concerns about. And just try to have some conversations about are some extra resources needed for those students, for those families, trying to wrap around them and get ahead of that communication with that family. And again, trying to bring them in sooner rather than later before they hit those 15 days and trying to figure out like what it is that we can help better support them and their student with at school. So some attendance interventions. Again, Next Path, like many have shared, has been huge for us this year and just trying to get ahead of noticing what students we should have on our radar who are close to hitting those 10 days or more. We have attendance meetings with any family who hits 15 days of absences. Again, there's always like a little bit of discretion there, right? We do have students who are not in charge of getting themselves to school. We have had definitely an influx of illnesses, so there's some wiggle room there, but majority of families who are hitting 15 days of absences, we're asking them to come in, have a proactive conversation, building some attendance success plans with them, figuring out what it is that we can better do to support their student at Horizon. And then just, again, looking really at, on those Thursdays when we meet as a team, looking at what students we want to make sure that we're wrapping around providing some extra supports for. Are we including them in a weekly lunch bunch? Are we making sure they feel connected at school with teachers, with adults, with other students? Okay, so moving on to disciplinary infractions. This is just a breakdown, again, by the types of disciplinary infractions we're seeing. Inappropriate language, physical contact, inappropriate behavior, all are kind of top contenders here. And then if you look at it broken down by trend, so we have 86 overall. 58 of those are major incidents. So again, those are usually dealt with by the office, either myself or Ms. Johnson. Minor incidents are usually taken care of by classroom teachers. Some primary behavioral challenges, again, the inappropriate language, inappropriate behavior, those sometimes can get intermingled. Those are the bulk of what we're seeing. And then the physical piece as well. Like Paul touched on a little bit, recess is a big hot button time for us at Horizon, especially with our 5th grade students. That is when I would say we see the majority of our physical contact disciplinary infractions coming up. Again, 5th grade boys, very competitive. They know the rules, they know the expectations. We teach into it all year long. But given, the competitiveness and the heat of the moment, things do get physical. So we are constantly having to reteach those expectations to students. This is just a breakdown of incidents per location. So you can see Horizon Playground takes the cake for the most disciplinary infractions, classrooms, and then hallways as well. I talked about this a little bit, but Playground right now is accounting for 29% of all of our incidences. So we've done some work on reviewing recess expectations. We have developed what we call Horizon Cool Tools, which are basically kind of little lesson plans that we put together as a care team and we push out to classroom teachers. And so what we do is, as a care team, we come together every month. We look at our next path data and look at our disciplinary infractions that are coming in, try to look at identifying some trends and some patterns, and then from there make some plans on how can we make sure that we're lowering those numbers in that area. So recess always tends to be one of those ones that we're talking about. So together as a care team, we'll look at that data, put together a lesson plan to push out to teachers. We push it out in the weekly. They go through that lesson plan, basically just reviewing expectations with students. And then we track and monitor that data closely for the next month. The other thing I want to touch on too is that we have a few incidences that were marked as not specified. We've definitely had some conversations on the need to better reteach or retrain our staff on how to document behaviors in Skyward, because a lot of the time they are putting something in, they'll write the description, but the location doesn't always get posted. We often see that with timestamps as well, where it will say, our highest time of day that we're getting disciplinary infractions is 1 a.m., which we know is not accurate. But it's that, teachers are trying to put the data in, which we appreciate. We just say, get it in there. But we do need to do some work on making sure we're putting in accurate time and then accurate locations as well to make sure that we have the appropriate data. Okay, bus specific breakdown. So in the first semester, we had 4 related, which I don't think is a completely true depiction of what we're seeing. I think one of the challenges that we have at the elementary level is that we still have very young learners. And oftentimes we don't always have timely reporting of incidences, which can be challenging, because the first thing that we do when we get a bus report or someone brings something forward, is I try to reach out to Right Way right away and ask for bus video footage. So one of the challenges is that we do still have very young learners at Horizon, and we'll have, a 3rd grade student who will see me on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden it will spur a memory or recollection of something, and they'll say, Ms. Horvat, I had this happen to me on the bus last week. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. And then they're like, I think it was Tuesday, or I think it was Wednesday. And so I'll try to dig through some video footage, but anyone who's requested video footage knows it's a very lengthy process. So I think that's one of the barriers that we have, and then we have conversations with our students all the time of timely reporting, right? Of if you see something, say something. If something happens to you on the bus, let an adult know. If you don't feel comfortable, if the bus driver is not your trusted adult, tell your grown-up right away when you get off the bus. They can give us a call, they can email, or come into the office and tell Miss Smith. Just find a trusted adult. The sooner we can let someone know, the sooner we can investigate it. So I definitely think that's a barrier of ours. Same with families as well. Sometimes their student will get home and they'll share something, and it won't get reported right away. And then the parent might think on it and say, like, oh, I thought about this and I didn't know if I should bring it forward, but now I'd like to. So, and then it's just hard. It's hard to nail down the specific time and incident. So a lot of the times they're not always documented in Skyward. We're oftentimes having more of like a conversation with the student of like, we heard this happened. We're not sure if it's true or not, but let me review the bus expectations with you. So it doesn't always get reported in Skyward. But some of the things that have been helpful this year, and I do think we have seen quite a success with the assigned bus seats. So Beth and I worked really hard this year with Right Way, and we could not do it without them. They were amazing in the process of putting together assigned seats on all of our 16 buses. And it was, 15 buses. Quite the endeavor, because trying to figure out which of our students who are rostered to buses and which of them actually ride the bus daily, or what that schedule looks like, it is different all the time. So it's always a work in progress, but that has helped tremendously this year in being able to hold students accountable, to be able to make sure that we have that open dialogue with Right Way of like, hey, this is where we've placed this student and this is why we've placed this student there, so they know a little bit more of the why behind some of our actions as a school. I think they feel more involved as like a partner in the process. So that has helped tremendously. And then again, just reviewing bus expectations regularly with our students. In addition to some of the things I talked about, some other disciplinary interventions we are focused on is definitely the recess piece. That always is a conversation at Horizon, just because of the way our playground is shaped, is supervision and making sure that we have enough adults out there to supervise. We are constantly having conversations of what it looks like to be an active recess monitor, to make sure that we're monitoring the space, especially during certain times like 5th grade recess, during football, things like that. What does that look like to make sure that we are proactively monitoring those students, to make sure that we have proximity? Professional development, this year we've spent a lot of time at Horizon really talking and giving some PD to our teachers on universal tier 1 strategies that they could implement at the classroom level first to more support all students, and just helping them to identify ways that they can help their students regulate within the classroom. And then data integrity, like I mentioned, we've definitely noticed a need to talk to our staff more about how to document in Skyward. And one of the conversations we've been having as of recently is just reframing our thinking on how we document minor behaviors. I think one of the challenges with behaviors is it's very subjective, and something that might be a minor behavior to me is going to be a major to someone else. Or something that people might think isn't even worthy of documenting. So we've had some conversations of rethinking how we think about minor behaviors as reteaching opportunities. And it doesn't have to be seen as punitive or disciplinary, but we are documenting the reteaching that the teacher did with the student. So again, it goes back to that restorative conversation piece and making sure that we're documenting that. And then for suspension, we have had 10 out of school suspensions. So pretty similar to the rates that we had last year at that time. And then just some of our glows and grows I touched on already, but our all school ticket system at Horizon has been huge for us. Again, the care team looks at data monthly, and we identify like some patterns and trends that we want to focus on. And then as a school, we set a goal. So this past month, we were working on hallway expectations and really making sure that our students know how to enter the building, how to exit the building, what it looks like, what it sounds like in the hallways when we're transitioning between class periods or encore periods. And then students earn tickets for demonstrating positive behavior from our teachers, and then they worked on earning some sort of incentives. So they had a glow stick party that they were working on earning, and they are doing that this Thursday, which they're very excited about. And then the care team will reset. They'll look at the data and set a new goal for the next month. Continuous PD for universal supports, some of those cool tool lessons, our Pride Awards that get done every single Friday. And then again, like I mentioned, the all school rewards have been huge as a big motivator for students at the tier 1 level. And then areas of opportunity and areas to grow, like I hit on, documentation and Skyward, that's going to be a big one, making sure that we're putting the things in there in a timely manner, making sure that our staff feels like they have the training and the support needed to help all students be successful at tier 1. And then again, just being really proactive with our families when it comes to attendance. That is it.
Thanks, Lexi. All right, Beth.
Excuse me, I just have, it's actually going to be for Beth and Lexi. I have to apologize. I hate coming to a meeting with a question that I didn't give to you before the meeting, but it just dawned on me. Would it be possible to get data, multi-year data on the behavioral incidents? Again, I apologize that I didn't ask for it before, but if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Did you want it like broken down by like the disciplinary action type, or is it more of general?
Probably major, minor at a minimum, right? I mean, the minors, I'm not too worried about, but yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, bringing it in for a close. Pewaukee Lake, our phrase is be here, be you, belong. And a big piece that Mike kind of talked about earlier is that concept of consequence in working with students and reteaching. Being our earliest learners, we are very heavy in the teach and reteach area, and we work on accountability versus consequence. So to Mike's point, there are consequences in place for our students when we see some of the behaviors that may pop up on the screen here, but there is also a lot of accountability components that are held within that as well. So starting off quickly with attendance, we've had a pretty solid positive attendance school year in general. February hit us really hard with illness, and we are trying to recover from that, so we've taken a little bit of a dip, but we held strong, and there was a lot of positive communication with families who have been on our watch list in years prior that we've been kind of connecting and supporting plans that were put in place last year that we would communicate our support of, checking in on resources to promote their continued positive attendance. We've seen some increase over this course of this school year with some of those chronic absentee families from years past. As we look at this school year again, we've seen an overall improvement. Like Lexi said, our students are not responsible of getting themselves to school in the morning, so we work closely with our families as we try to continue to improve our attendance rate for all students in our building. When we look at it overall, at that point of the year, we were at 95.3. Again, we've dipped a little bit overall attendance-wise to this point due to those student illnesses. Looking at the chronic absenteeism, 11% of our students are chronically absent. In some cases within this data, a piece that is difficult for us to divide out is students who are on varied contracts for ABA therapies will pop up in this chronic absentee space because they are out of the building for various scheduling. So we do have a variety of students who are included in that 11% who have approved pieces, but because their attendance is taken in a manner, it does depict that we would have a higher number. We did file for truancy with one family this school year, and we've been working closely with the county and met with them last week to continue to counsel and work with that family. Since we have gotten to that point, we have seen a positive change and some positive momentum to that student's overall attendance. We're hoping to continue that trend as the school year goes. And then we have 5 families who have received attendance communication regarding just their student being tardy. So we have several families that receive attendance communications in the form of just those 5, 7, and 10-day letters or plus. But specific to being late to school, we really only have 5 families who are in that ballpark at that point in the year that we're really focusing on that 8:40 arrival time.
Beth, I have a quick question for you. On those numbers, does that count 4K, 5K, first, second grade, all?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes,
Okay.
so this would be all of our students at PLE. Disciplinary infractions, when we're looking at PLE's numbers, again, we land in that minor and major for physical contact. A lot of these numbers, and I'll break down some of this information in the next slide, gets into our students and roughhousing and not really being aware of their bodies and the movements their bodies are making. When we look at our breakdown. So we have 65 total discipline records for the first semester, and within that we have 34 of those are major and 31 are minor. And physical contact is the top. But if you look towards that one note there, they're often roughhousing or reactive. They're not intentional. So the students at PLE are coming to school. Oftentimes we don't have interactions negatively with students where they have come to school with a concern that they are planning on acting upon. It is a reactive moment where someone took the ball out of their hands and they are upset and they react. It's a situation of the joy of recess and football, and they get caught up in the moment and they do tackle versus doing that touch or any of those tag games. So a lot of our incidents, although get put in as majors or minors, we're talking more developmentally looking at the lens of 4-year-old to 8-year-old, which is that roughhousing piece. So they're not out physically fighting and getting in altercations. It is more of that roughhousing and just awareness of themselves and where they are around others. Disruption is another where we see 7 minors and 5 majors, and then inappropriate language and defiance, same situation. A lot of times behaviors within our students that we see coming into these categories as majors, maybe students with multiples. And so as we are working with students within the different plans and interventions, if a student has accumulated as they're getting into like their second or third time where they may have a physical contact, although it may be roughhousing, we've seen it as a repeated behavior, so it gets entered as a major. Within PLE, we did have 3.5 suspensions, 2.5 days were in school, and 1 out of school. We do not like to do out of school suspensions for our students. If we have to get to that point, we prefer to do in school. Our students are at an age too where if they connect behavior and getting to go home, we can create a really negative pattern. So we work really hard in our building between our teaching staff as well as Brian Siegel and Dan Deuce, Laura Howard, to put in supports in place where we may have to come up with a bit of a creative schedule for a day to hold the student accountable for the choices they were making, but by sending them home, we're giving them the wrong message and building the wrong connection. When we talk about the bus specific, we have 15 total discipline incidents for the first semester. Those 15 are also wrapped into the numbers from the other discipline ones. We have 9 minors, and 6 majors. And again, we get into that physical contact. Kids who are pushing, kids who are reaching at backpacks, hats, and oftentimes it's just in being in that personal space. And that's where kids get frustrated when we have 3 to a seat. They get a little tight within that, and sometimes that is not everyone's used to having to sit closer to others, and they can get a little pushy. Inappropriate language is another one that our students will test out language when they're outside of school, unfortunately, and so we've had 2 incidents there with majors as well as minor for disruption, where they are just being disruptive, whether that's standing on seats, yelling, or just not being redirectable from when their driver is addressing it. So we, like Lexi was mentioning, in some of these interventions, Lexi and I work really closely to have consistent expectations and interventions between our 2 buildings so that our students kind of know what to expect when they leave us and go into Horizon. And so we have the assigned seats. We continue our positive bus shout outs, where we work closely with the drivers to pick up on the small things that students might be doing really well and highlight those for our students within announcements and with families. We also work with Right Way to try and provide behavior management strategies. Our drivers are there to drive the bus, and that's what they're trained and working on. They're not trained educators, so they oftentimes appreciate getting some of those tips and tricks. Within our building, we use second step and social thinking language, and so we have things like you'll hear us talk about the group plan or what is expected versus unexpected. And we have trained our drivers to use that same language, so many of our drivers have the group plans hanging up in the bus, and then we have students who we may be working specifically with on their behaviors who have their own individual group plans that may be hanging in the bus or the driver hangs onto as a second level of support for that student, because when they are away from us, we always talk with our building about your teacher is the leader of your classroom, your driver is the teacher on your bus. So your bus is just another classroom, and it's an extension of PLE. So while you're in it, the same expectations we have are there. So our drivers do a really nice job, and we will hear the kids often say to them when they ask the kids about what is your group plan, oh gosh, you know that too. And so having that consistent language has been really helpful. Paul kind of talked about the restorative strategies. Again, that's the same piece. Getting on the bus or in the morning when we're receiving kids or putting kids on, having that conversation with drivers whenever possible with the student present to fix the concern. Just like in the classroom, the kids have to have a connection with their driver and have, we don't want that to be broken, because when it is broken, the kids won't go to them if they have their own concern or they're concerned that they're always maybe being targeted by a driver for their choices. So fixing that relationship allows our kids to have a more positive experience on the bus. So some of those interventions or responses, I put this one at the end because these are all tied into whether it's on the bus or in the classroom, on the playground. Our big thing at PLE is those parental partnerships. We work very closely with families to address the behaviors we're seeing and having conversations with them. We have a lot of phone calls, and we want to make sure that families and school are on the same page and aligned. We do tiered consequences within a progressive discipline system, so each student, dependent upon the scenario, depending on the student, depending on maybe barriers or things that are in place for that child, we work through step by step to support them within an instructional approach, which is the reteaching of the behavior and the expectations. Also that restorative approach where we're fixing it with either the friend or relationships of student to student or student to staff. And then we get into those high level approaches where we may be having those pieces like the accountability that moves into a consequence level. We're going to continue to train our staff on our de-escalation training and just continue to grow their Tier 1 behavior management strategies to support students early on. The faster we can get ahead of our PLE students in teaching them behaviors and how to use strategies in lieu of the reactive pieces or the impulsive choices that they often make, the better off we're going to be. We see large behaviors in October, and we've seen a gradual decline, which is pretty much our trend year after year. And then working with student services team to just determine what those earlier interventions are. We do use check-in and check-out, Tier 1 through Tier 3, and it, like you were talking about earlier, it kind of varies on who that person is. Mike is one of our mentors in our building for a student who just needed a little bit of support, needed a positive role model, someone that they could be excited to go and see from time to time. And so we've gone anywhere from using adults to PHS students who need, they need it for volunteer hours. We see it as growing a connection with the kids, and it benefits both parties. And then we have check-in, check-out, obviously, with our teachers, Stan Deuce, Laura Howard. And so we also use our social skills groups to just address the gaps. So like if a student is really struggling in an area of self-management or social awareness, that might be a specific group that we have that student and maybe others who come together to just practice role play different scenarios. Our kids learn really well from doing, so anytime we can give them scenarios, whether that is in that small group or through announcements, we find that to be really effective. And then overall, our successes, we continue to partner with Right Way for the bus shout. We do student shout outs which are put in by our staff. And staff have access to a Google form where they put those in for Brian and I, and they go into daily announcements. We have a positive parent of the week who's done something kind of above and beyond, and we highlight them in our weekly announcements on Fridays. Lunch bunch, so students who maybe did something collaboratively as a team, we bring them in for lunch, either with Brian or I, and then our daily, Caught Being Awesome, which is things anywhere from seeing the entire first grade, follow the group plan, and make expected choices all the way to recess. So just a variety of things there, as well as just daily communication with families. And that's it.
So Beth, let's say you have a 4K-er, and maybe there's behavioral issues, there might be a mental health issue. And for better words, let's say they have a meltdown, and in the course of that meltdown, that child ends up kicking or hitting a staff member, a teacher, a para. Do those incidences get added into these numbers, or are they separate?
No, those are included. Depending upon the situation, if we're talking about a student who is dysregulated due to disability, those are not always noted, documented within Skyward. Those have documentations within special education in their own realm. If it's a student from our regular ed population who is upset they didn't win the game that day and they have that moment, we look at that dependent upon the student. Is this the first time we've ever seen this? Anytime we have a student that would lash out or have an aggressive nature towards that staff member, they're immediately removed from the classroom. We have a zero tolerance for physical altercation or violence, or intentional or not, towards staff. Their return to the classroom is dependent on that level of intent. Was it intentional? We have students who, as you know, and who are who will stick their hand out to kind of push away. Proximity for adults towards small children who may be dysregulated, that is another piece that we have to look at awareness of. But we do have steps in place where we discuss with the teacher about our action steps of the student taking a break, coming with either Mr. Siegel and myself, Mr. Deuce, and having time out so that teacher has the ability if they need time. And so there's a lot of different moving pieces. It's never an identical story for that student compared to another student, but it is we take from the classroom if we are physically harming others.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So I would say also just kind of along those lines, we've just recently, we're piloting a little bit of a new program specific more to special education to help with that. We've named it, Mr. Pizzo named it Navigate, so I think we're calling it Navigate, which gives us another tool. So what you're seeing here, at least I hope what you're seeing, is there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and I guess that's the point I was trying to make before. You know, if your only tool is a hammer, you see all your problems as nails, and, you know, that's your approach, right? So when you have a variety of approaches and a lot of people with specialized training and different backgrounds, you have a variety of things that you can do. It's not perfect. We have misbehavior. We have persistent misbehavior with some students. We have some aggressive behaviors, those things. But hopefully what's come across here is there's data that's analyzed. There's a lot of strategies. There are systems in place. There's people who care about student behavior and everybody's safety, so that we have orderly learning environments, and those things come through, I think, in the many different approaches that you're seeing here. So hopefully that helped give the board a little bit of what you were looking for when you established that goal.
I have a question for all of you. Do you feel like you have what you need to address these issues? As a school board, is there anything that you could come to us, like, dream big? Is there something that you don't have that you want?
I don't think it's something that we don't have. I think it's just an area that, as a district, that we've identified we're going to continue to grow as our tier 1 support, you know, within the classroom, making sure our teachers feel like they have the skills and strategies. Our teachers are incredibly talented, and sometimes, though, when you're faced in a moment of stress, as anyone is, a response isn't often like right there. So we work really hard to talk often with teachers about those strategies that they can pull so they are auto response, even in a moment of stress, what they can do. But I would say, I think just an area that we're continuing. We recently attended a CISA training on MTSS and strategies that we can use. We went really in depth about check-in, check-out, but just other ways to look at students and the data we receive about kids and how to look at them from tiers and how we can approach proactively versus reactively with kids. And I think that was a phenomenal training to kind of get that ball rolling for us.
Perfect.
Good job, Beth.
I'll give you one last data point too. So I'm the appeal on suspensions. First of all, we have, as I said before, pretty low suspension rates, but unless, of course, you know, I'm getting up there in years now, so maybe my brain's not remembering right, but I have not had a single appeal to a suspension all year. So what that says is just another piece of anecdotal evidence that things are being handled really well at the building level.
One other question, and I think I heard this somewhere, but there was like a Waukesha County task force or something on absenteeism Did either anybody know anything about that and who participated? Was that Emily or?
Yeah, Emily. Yeah, Emily and Michelle Davison have attended that.
Just Michelle or somebody else?
And Emily Hansen.
Emily, okay, yeah. Because I think that was recognized out there, and I guess I'm bringing it up because, you know, you think about all the time we spend in terms of working on absenteeism and all that stuff, whatever the county came up with, I mean, because somewhere in the county, somebody said, hey, we need to do something about this, so, and I guess I'm supportive of that, and whatever we can do to increase the attendance and figure out strategies to help address any issues out there, whether it's with this child or with the parents, whatever, so.
Yeah, and to that, although Emily obviously is within the high school, Michelle is in all of our buildings, so she's kind of that consistent link for everyone to make sure that we're working with families and offering the same level of resources to everyone, so that we aren't, you know, in PLE, you know, throwing everything at them and then be less layers somewhere else. Michelle kind of adds that consistent piece for us.
But I thought Emily too was also trying to work with some of the local pediatricians and family practice physicians to get a more standard language in terms of, you know, excuses, in terms of medical excuses, kinds of things as well, so.
Yeah, the release of information piece has been helpful for us to be able to talk to pediatricians or other providers to kind of get some consistency in what information we're really looking for, because we will often get letters at the elementary level of is able to be out until feels better. And that's really difficult because we have families that'll utilize that for 2 weeks. And so we've just been working together with partnering with them a little bit more to make attendance concerns aware when we have that release of information piece. Yeah, we don't cold call, but yeah.
And the way the board policy is written, all of the APs are the attendance officers. Really, it's them who looks at if there is a doctor's excuse, and Beth and I looked at one this year, they determine whether that's an acceptable excuse or not. So if there's like a blanket letter from a doctor saying, you know, if Johnny's not feeling well, he can miss 3 weeks of school, it's their job to kind of decipher that.
I mean, and the thing is, I mean, so there's a children's clinic over by the Aldi's over in that direction over there. So, I mean, and again, we have contacts. Dr. Gedite used to be our medical director here, and I think actually he's now the chief medical officer for Children's Hospital as well. So, I mean, there's connections out there that if you needed connections, and I know she also connected with somebody at Pro Healthcare, trying to get those physicians more in tune with what's going on relative to the writing an excuse that is understandable and acceptable and reasonable, if you will, so.
And one of the unique things we encounter now more and more is virtual visits. And we will have students with multiple virtual visits over a course of several days in a row, and then you're dealing with inconsistent providers because it's whoever within the queue. So we have to really monitor the use of those to make sure that it's legitimate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great work. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
All right, moving right along. Early college credit, Start College Now applications. Anthony?
Yeah, so in your board packets, I also emailed you guys the list of students and courses, but in accordance with board policy and Wisconsin Act 59, students are entitled to be able to take post-secondary college credit opportunities. And really, there's a couple different differentiations. I know we've discussed this before, but I always like to remind. The early college credit program is students' ability to take credits at UW system schools and then private nonprofit colleges. The Start College Now, that's kind of the technical school side of things. And then the Dual Enrollment Academy that's a year-long commitment for students where they're enrolled into a dual enrollment program. So, and I did notice there is a typo in there. We have 51 students that are applying for post-secondary programs, 11 at the early college credit program level, 26 at the Start College Now, and then we have 14 students that are applying for the Dual Enrollment Academy. Fall's number is always bigger because the way that Dual Enrollment Academy is set up, you're approving for their participation for all of next year. So when we look at this in the next fall, approving for the following spring, those students are just already included, but we approve it now. So list of students are there. The total cost of all of those students participating is $158,332. they are responsible then for the purchase of books.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it also, don't the students, it doesn't mean they're necessarily gonna take all of those classes, right?
It's many times first of all, it needs to fit into their schedule here based on the other classes that they're taking. Sometimes classes are full as well. So that's the maximum cost.
Right, okay.
Looking at historically, are these numbers going up? They even
This is higher than we've traditionally been in the past.
due to just students understanding these are available?
My guess is that I think students and families are more aware of it and taking advantage of it.
I mean, it's a huge financial
Great
component. I mean, if they
benefit,
take these
yeah.
college credits, it's essentially, and some of them get up to either a semester's worth or sometimes even a full year of college credits, so. In the motion, you don't have the dual enrollment in there in the motion, or is that just, I'm not reading it correctly?
Just says start college now and early college credit. So should it say start college now, dual enrollment, and
And
early?
early college
It
credit.
says, what are you talking? Move to
No, the
approve
motion
start-
just says start college now and early college credit.
Early college credit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're saying dual enrollment,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Through-
All
so
right, so
add
Have
that
you-
in there.
we can add that.
Yeah, we haven't made the motion yet, it's okay. Have you done anything, Anthony, with the college level examination program?
I think you brought this question up
Sure did.
one time in the past. We have not. We have a multitude of opportunities here in building for students to get college credits here, staying in the building.
Do you know what college level examination program is?
That's where they take the AP test, they take a test and they ultimately get credit. You asked the same question last year, and I sent that information because at that time I wasn't aware. So I researched it, looked into it, and then I kind of shared that out with the board as well.
I did, because your answer just now suggested that still was not clear in your mind. So you can pick, so this is a sizable chunk of change.
Yep.
And when you do that, you preclude yourself from taking college level examinations in the subject matters that you would be taking AP course or college courses. So it's a one-time shot. And there's no, it's an exam, and whatever the cost of that exam is, and you get those credits, and you're done.
Yep.
That is still, as you present everything here, that is a much, much better deal than anything you've got going right now.
I disagree, they have to pass a test. They have to be fully prepared on that day. This way, they take the class, they get the credits.
Well, and these state statute, we cannot, like, these students can apply and participate in this, and I guarantee that these courses require a test as well. But I do understand that you can take the test and you can get the credit. And as I said before, we have not done that here.
I think we should push that. I think parents should be very much aware of that. That is, I mean, that's 16 credits.
Right. And that
When
would be
you're all
them-
said and done,
Them
yeah.
preparing on their own and taking the exam.
And it's, I mean, I'm a product of that. There was no preparation whatsoever. It's based on your accumulated knowledge as you've gone through high school. It's not based on you having to learn stuff to get the credits. If you've taken 3 years of English, that's what is being tested, that you've actually done that and done well. Not that you've got college level, I mean, probably not saying this correct, but it's testing you on already what you know. It is not testing you on things you have to learn. And it's a colossal benefit to the students.
Noted.
Thanks.
Yeah, and there's probably, I mean, no reason we couldn't just have a little bit more information available on that, Mary. So,
Ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
I did find it. So it says I will move to approve the Start College Now applications for is it 26 students, and then early college credit applications for 10 students, and dual enrollment for 14 students in semester 1 of the 26-27 school year as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
All right, next policy committee. Ashley's not here this evening, but policy 6300.03, release time for students. It was revisited and discussed from a previous meeting. Both the final policy and the marked up version are enclosed so that you can easily see the recommended changes. All those other policies, 5500.110, 5300.04, 3400.13, 6300.01, 6500.01, and 6900.03 were all reviewed and no recommended changes. So that is first read. If anyone has any questions, please do reach out to Ashley before they get brought back for final vote.
Are we not going to discuss them at the board?
You can, for sure.
What is the purpose of first read?
The purpose of first read is so you can look at those and you can discuss those.
Correct. That's what my understanding
Yeah.
is too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not committed to having to back channel.
Nope. That's why I first read it.
So I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Brent. And Anthony's here. Do you have the exact text of the requests of these parents that is the basis of these changes?
And Mary, I want to highlight, we had this conversation in the policy committee meeting. The markup that exists and the change to policy is not based on that. It is based on students leaving school for some type of religious instruction. So that release time for class religious observance, that state statute that's listed in there is for students leaving school for religious instruction up to 180 hours a week. And that's in alignment with that state statute.
All right, I'll try this again.
Our conversation of a student.
This has been altered to dismiss students from class, during class,
What's been altered?
the policy.
It has not. We did have that discussion. This policy's been up now for, I think we've looked at it 3 times.
Yeah.
And we did have that discussion. The last time we discussed this in policy committee, Mike made these edits in red.
Excuse me, if we could just, I know we had this, and we talked and you never answered my questions. What is the basis of changing this policy?
Okay, I'm the one that put the red pieces in here, which are the changes. The changes made in the policy were part of the regular rotation update, and what we do is we review state statute.
Excuse me again.
Hold on, I'm trying to answer your question.
I
I'd
know,
like to
but you'd
finish.
answered that question that
No,
way
I'm gonna
before.
I'm gonna finish my answer to your question because I wouldn't
Oh,
interrupt
I'd love
you
that. Thank you.
because that would be rude of me. So, you asked why does it say what it says? It says it because through our regular process, we look at state statute. And
No,
we
but
try
see,
to,
Mike, I didn't ask
again,
that.
I'm still trying to
I
finish
want
my
to know
answer
the
your question.
reason why it was
I'm
changed.
giving you the answer to the reason, if you would let me finish. Okay? You asked me a very simple question. Why does it say what it says? It says what it says because we have a review process, and when I reviewed state statute, I felt that this language more closely reflected state statute.
Your changes that you've brought forth to the board say that a student can be dismissed during class for religious prayer? Prayer, I believe, is what.
No,
that's-
no, we have to
let's
go
read
back
it.
and say this again. This
Yeah,
is
do so.
not about releasing for religious activities in the school. It's releasing kids to leave the school.
I'm going to read the language.
Oh, thank you.
The language that's in the policy, and it's the same that was at the policy committee, which directly reflects the law. Release time from class for religious observance. Students may be excused from class for religious observance when requested in advance by a parent or guardian per Wisconsin statute 118.155. Such release will be limited to the time reasonably necessary, up to 180 minutes per week, and recorded as an excused absence. The district remains neutral regarding religious activities while respecting students' rights to practice their faith.
Okay, that is not what the statute says. The statute says release for religious instruction.
Then you have the
This
right
is
to
release
suggest
for
an
religious
alternative.
observance. What is that?
What is a religious observance? What do you think it means?
I'm not changing the policy, you are.
No, no, we don't change anything.
You just read it
This
out
is
loud to
this
me
is
here.
language that's presented. If you don't like it, Mary, make a suggestion to change
That you
it.
said that was in line with the state statute, and it's not. The statute does not
Then make
say
a suggestion
observance.
for a change, Mary. If you don't like it, what would you like to see different?
I don't think it should be changed. I'm wondering why this was
Okay, so
put
what is it
forward as
that you're
change.
recommending?
No, I don't think it should be changed.
Okay.
And you folks brought it forward as a change, and we don't have those minutes recorded like we do here. But when you first brought it forward, it was because 5 students, over a period of 5 years, had come in requesting to be excused from class to go and pray on campus.
But that's not what this policy pertains to, Mary. This
Excuse me,
policy
if
pertains to instruction outside of school.
Madam Chairman, can I reclaim my time? Do I have any time? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when you brought forth the policy during the first committee meeting, and I've asked to have the committee meetings recorded, that's not what you said. What you said was, and I think it was Brian, you said 5 students over a period of 5 years had requested that they be excused from class during class. 10 minutes was mentioned. I know it's not in the policy. That was what you answered to me when I first asked. And that they would be excused from class and they would remain on campus. And Mike, you described this to me. You said they were going to another place on this campus to pray. None of that is in the state statute. And so that's why I'm asking, what was the exact language that these parents were coming to you with that they could not find it within the state statute that they needed, you folks felt it needed to be changed?
Mary, what's your goal? What do you want done with this policy? I don't understand your issue.
I'm still asking the administration.
Mary, I'm over here. Mary, I asked you a direct question. You're gonna ignore me?
I'm
All right.
asking the administration.
I'm gonna make a motion that we end this conversation and move on.
Madam President, do we not have the ability to discuss anything in this
I
board?
asked you a question
do.
and you refused to answer, so
I'm
I'm
asking
ending the
the
conversation.
administration here.
And he answered your question.
I think the problem here is, Mary, is I've come to every one of these policy committee meetings. We've discussed this at least 2 or 3 times, and it's this round robin, the same things getting said. This policy has to do with instruction outside of the school. You keep bringing up a child wanting to leave class and go pray on campus. That's not what we're discussing here. We're discussing a policy that has to do with leaving school campus for religious instruction. That is the policy.
That's not
at
what
hand.
it says.
Bren, we have a motion and a second to end this conversation, so we do need to.
I'll take a
Excuse
vote.
me.
We do have a
Do we
motion
never
and
have
a
discussion?
second.
We just listened to 90 minutes of these people, which is fine. But these people here never get to talk. 3 times that we had discussions about things that were important, your answer is to shut down the conversation.
I'm shutting down the conversation because you aren't listening and you're not responding to a direct question.
I'm
to
not
me.
dealing
So-
with you. These people are here to answer my question. My questions are not for you. I'm asking these people who brought the changes forward, which would be Mike. And if I remember correctly, you were informed by Brian because you said this was going on in the high school. Are you telling me now, Michael, that they were not being asked to go leave class and they were not praying on this campus during class? Is that what your position is now?
I mean, I'm happy to answer.
Go ahead.
Okay, then I'm going to answer. Am I going to be allowed to answer? Okay, thank you. So, your memory and mine are a little different in this way. Brian was here, and he gave an example. So the students, and then you asked, how many times has this happened? And it was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe 5 times in the last 5 years. That is not why the policy changes were brought forward. We talked about different things that do happen, and yes, if there are students who've looked to be accommodated during the school day, they've been allowed to go to a conference room or something privately and pray. That has been allowed. That's not why this was brought forward. As I tried to answer before, and this is the board's policy. The way that this works is the administration reviews things like case law, statute, legal advice we might get in a release and say, here is suggested language. If you don't like it, then you guys can change it. The example that you're bringing up, that was a discussion, absolutely. Those were the statements that were made, but that was simply an example. That was not the reason why the policy changes were brought forward.
Well, then I'm back to the question. This language here says observance. The state statute says instruction. And I don't know why you'd change it. It does not comport with the state statute once you change it to observance. Observance is not the same
So are you
thing.
moving to, would you like to move to change observance to instruction?
I don't think this policy should be altered at all.
Okay.
So when, my understanding is when you folks are going through your process, actually, I thought it would be the reverse, that you would have an issue and you're thinking, okay, we need to address this because it's coming up against policy XYZ. And then you bring forth to us what is the issue that is coming up against, or what's causing the issue, and what policy do you need to change to address that issue. You folks keep telling me that, and correctly I guess, you do it the reverse. You just rotate through the policies, and as you see them, you change it. This one, you substantially and materially changed, and I was asking why.
Yeah.
The fact that it's coming up in rotation is not a justification to change a policy. And you've changed it from from instruction to observance. And then the example that you gave, so this was another part of my question, and thank you for recalling correctly, was this 10-minute business. They were going to leave class for 10 minutes and go and pray on campus and come back. And then your policy here says that gets counted as an excused absence. So I would still be back to you folks, if that was the example and this is what was going on, you're excusing a child 5 times a week? How is that not compounding to the massive absences? I mean, that's well more than 10 absences. And you state that definitely here.
Yeah.
You say that when they do that, that counts as an absence.
Yeah, so,
Well, you're way over 10 awfully quickly.
yeah, so I just want to your comments, when you were talking about what leads to a policy suggestion to the board, and again, it's the board's policy, the board can accept, reject, modify anything. The administration is just here trying to help the board's policies stay current. So it can be an issue arises that shows maybe a deficit in a policy. That could be a reason why we would bring a policy to the committee to say, hey, we've had the situation. Here's some suggested language, a modification of the policy. What do you think? We could give you a legal opinion. Or we also, every policy is reviewed just as a continuous improvement practice because laws change. We have a lot of policies. They might become out of date. So that's why you see a lot of policies, to your point, a lot of policies don't change. We had a lot of policies on tonight. This is the only one that had any suggested changes. So then now it's an opportunity, like you're having right here, to decide, do you want to make some changes to the policy or not? If you disagree with the language, that's totally acceptable. Then as a board, you decide, do you want to accept it, you want to modify it, or do you want to reject it?
Understood, and that was understood before you began speaking. It was understood during the first committee meeting, the second committee meeting, the third.
So Mary,
Sticking
if
to
you
the
wanted-
point,
Mary,
I'm
Mary,
still,
time out.
may I have my
Time out,
time?
Mary. If you want the word changed from instruction to, or observance to instruction, will that resolve your issue?
May I continue my questioning of the administration, or is that not allowed?
I think that we've discussed this ad nauseum.
That's your
almost, really.
opinion. I don't think
mean,
that's,
because
I have
honestly,
questions on it. I still would like to get these
I'll say
questions.
this a third time, and we've already gotten a motion. You're discussing something that happens on campus, and this policy that we're discussing has to do with instruction observance.
That is
off
not what the
campus.
administration presented, and Michael just reaffirmed it, and thank heavens it's on video. What he said was, what was going on was they were leaving class and they were going to pray on campus. I don't know how you missed hearing that. Now, if I could continue asking the administration the question, which is, you have felt it necessary to change the law, to change the policy from what it is, which is leaving class off campus for instruction to observance. And that just does not come out of thin air. There's a reason why you have thought to do that. It's too small of a thing, but it opens a massive can of worms. And I'm trying to understand why you thought you should do this. I
mean,
thought
Mary,
I understood it.
I'm the one that wrote it, and if you think there's some big conspiracy theory going on here,
I
there's
thought I
not.
understood it when you were explaining, when Brian was explaining the example. It was the only example you had, and what he said was 5 students over a period of 5 years were praying 10 minutes, and they were doing here on campus.
That was
That
just
was
a
the
purely
explanation offered.
That was an example that was shared and just kind of a guess. So I don't know, maybe 10
What do you mean
minutes,
it's a
maybe
guess?
5
It's
minutes.
it's a reality. That's what was going on. That's what he
I know
said.
Mary doesn't like it when I speak, but I'll give you another example. I teach Bible study on Wednesday mornings. There are children from public schools that are called out of public school to come to my church, and I teach them Bible study for 2 hours on Wednesday mornings. This policy would address that.
That's what this is
Their
about.
parents are calling them out, they're excusing them, they're leaving school for religious instruction, and then they're going back to school. It's 2 hours a week.
And any
So,
other
Mike, if I could
discussion,
finish my
frankly,
question.
is not on this agenda and is out of order. We are discussing this policy. Am I correct,
Yes.
Stacey?
I am discussing
Larry?
this policy.
If you
No,
want to
no, you're
change,
not.
then present a change. You're just talking about the same thing in circles
Excuse
over
me,
and over.
Mike, so it already is the statute that they can do exactly what the other board member just described. They can already take their student out of class for instruction. You have changed it.
Then change it if you don't like it. I've answered your question like 17 times. I don't know how it's answered.
I know, but you're not, why would you change it in the first place?
He's already
What did you
explained
think was wrong with the state statute that was going on in this school that was not accommodated by the state
I felt that
statute?
the language was clear. You don't, so change it. It's that simple. I think you're looking for some deep issue here that doesn't exist.
Right. And
No,
with
I'm
that-
repeating to you folks
and-
what you
and
said
with
to
that,
me.
we did
I
have
don't know
a
how else to answer
motion.
your
They're leaving
question. I've
class for
answered it.
10
With
minutes at a
that, we had a
time.
motion and we had a
17.
second, so I will take a vote. All in favor?
My motion was to end this conversation.
And Larry,
There you seconded it.
second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Cowards.
Any opposed?
You're freaking cowards. You do this every time there's an issue.
Mary,
You
you
cannot
talk in
stand
circles and you make no point.
discussing it.
You make no point. You talk in circles and you just say the same thing 100 times, and you make no point. If you have a point, make it. If you want to make a change, make it.
If you would like to have words changed, please do let myself and Ashley know, and we'll make those changes. All right, moving along. Next is personnel issues. We're going to start with resignations, and we do have 4, Mike.
We do. So, you see we have 4 resignations for your approval. Amber Schmitz, speech path, Lisa Seidel, 4K special ed teacher, Mike Lassard, alt ed teacher, and Maggie Gaska, special ed teacher. I would seek your approval of those resignations.
I move to approve the resignation of Amber Schmitz, Lisa Seidel, Mike Lassard, and Maggie Gaska as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Then, we have 2 employments.
We do, and one of them is here tonight. So, very excited to recommend some really great people that came through a highly competitive process. But I mean, I'm really happy because we're trading way up. I kid because I care. So, but 2 positions, Paul Behrens is recommended to you. We'll start with him and take these independently as positions. Paul Behrens, Chief Technology Officer. It's a new position that we're kind of, as you know, we reduced admin position as part of our budget management process. And so Paul is kind of a hybrid of Mike Murphy and components of Rachel Yerk's position. We had some kind of discussion a little bit, I think, before the meeting earlier about who's going to handle some of the pieces. Anthony's going to handle some pieces. Other teaching and learning admins will handle some pieces, some learning coaches of some of the different facets of Rachel's job. Our awesome IT department will pick up some of the slack from Mike, because Paul can only do so many things. But he comes to us very highly qualified, tremendous background, knowledge, and experience in the network engineering side of things. And in terms of training and teaching people. He's an instructor at Nicolay College, so he's had some good experiences there, really strong in cybersecurity, which is absolutely critical in this day and age. So I would take any questions that you have. I'd like to thank Larry for being in on the interview team representing the board with Paul's selection. So happy to take any questions that you have, and then I would seek your approval for Paul Behrens as Chief Technology Officer.
I'll move to approve the hiring of Paul Behrens as the Chief Technology Officer for the Pewaukee School District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I can already do the other one too, so.
All right, so, and Sarah Vieira is here tonight with us. Sarah rose to the top out of, in a multi-round process. Thank you to Matt and Travis and Bren for being involved in the early rounds of the interviewing process, and then the entire board, of course, as you will recall, was part of the finalist interviews that Sarah was obviously a part of. She consistently rose to the top among a very qualified, highly experienced, capable pool. So we're very excited to bring someone with Sarah's experience. She even carried the heavy burden of learning under John. Once upon 2011, was that? Yep, 2011. So it's been long enough that she's kind of forgotten some of that experience. I got to stop picking on John. That's too much.
John is a phone call away, right? So.
And John is a phone call away. So I actually have two things for you to consider. Obviously you're all very familiar with Sarah because you were in on her interview process. So I want to approve a motion to approve her contract. Hopefully you maybe noticed in there I have a memorandum in there that is really ancillary to approve 10 days prior. The contracts administratively go July 1 to June 30. We don't want to wait that long to get Sarah officially in here working with John in some transition, so I've put in there seeking your approval at her per diem for additional 10 days. We have Leadership Week at the end of June. We certainly want her present for that. Her and John, frankly, are already working, so we're getting some free labor out of her already. So really two pieces. One, I would seek your approval of her hire and the contract, and then secondly, to get your approval for the additional 10 days at her per diem for transition.
So let's take a motion for that original contract first.
Move to approve Sarah Vieira as Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Now the ancillary.
And then move to approve 10 days of paid transition time for the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services to be worked by June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay.
Yay! You're official.
She's still happy. She's got a smile on her face.
Oh,
That's good.
goodness,
We're
that is great.
Excited to have Sarah
Welcome, Sarah.
as part of the team.
Happy to have you.
No leave requests.
No leave request. So moving right along, upcoming activities. Thursday, April 7th is spring election. Then that following Monday, the 13th, is 6 p.m. Business Affairs, 7 p.m. board meeting where we will do the oath of office for the new board members. Monday, April 20th is the Kiwanis Awards ceremony. Tammy, who else besides me has signed up to go? Stacey, okay.
Larry.
And Larry, okay, thank you. It's a great event. Tuesday, April 21st.
And that's at WCTC.
Yes, WCTC. Tuesday, April 21st is a new board member gathering. It's through WASB, but again, we're holding it right here in our Commons area, and Larry's been asked to co-host this year. So hopefully we can get some board members to attend that. It's a good event, and you can brush up on all things board members. Monday, April 27th, policy meeting at 6, regular board meeting at 7. Then Wednesday, April 29th from 5:30 to 7:30 is a ribbon cutting ceremony. There will be self-guided tours. Anything else you wanna say?
Yeah, so April 29th, 5:30 ribbon cutting, followed by really a self-guided tour. We're working on maps and signs, and there will be some food, courtesy of our Pro Start culinary students, which will be obviously a highlight of that event. Putting together a fairly extensive invitation list of dignitaries from the community, key partners, maybe some retired or past staff who we think would really like to be part of that, including teachers who used to teach in family consumer science and tech ed and phi ed and some of those spaces that are new here, so that they can, if they can't make it, we understand, but certainly want them to know we're thinking of them and know that everybody that's worked here before has contributed to the fact that we have these great spaces and programs, as well as a community that continues to support this school district generously.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so it should be, Miranda's gonna do some great work, Tammy's gonna do some great work, it's gonna be a really nice event.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
And gonna have, as our plan is to have students cut the ribbon, cause that's who it's all about,
Yeah,
so.
the kids. Awesome. Another great event, Tuesday, May 5th is the Open Door Awards at the Sharon Lynn Wilson Center. Unfortunately, I will miss because I will be out of state. But Tammy, who is signed up to go?
Right now, Larry is signed up to go, and I believe Matt said he was
You know I'll be there.
Stacy's gonna be there.
And Stacey.
I mean, do I don't count because I'm on the committee? Like I help?
Right.
I'm a worker,
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
attendee.
Okay, awesome.
So that
awesome.
event, do you remember how many nominations we had? It was 300 plus? Close to 400 nominations for awards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So about 400 nominations. We selected all the finalists through our process. What was cool this year is last year's winners then got to weigh in on the finalists and do some voting. A couple of us sworn to secrecy know who the winners are. So that process has been completed, and so we're kind of going into what does that program look like. We always got to try to keep it new and fresh, so we have a couple ideas we're working on, but some improvements going at it for our second year, like, water. Bottles of water would be good.
Yeah. Just to grab.
Last year. Yeah. So April 6th, we're doing that? Yeah. I think Miranda and I are slated to pre-record that in a video next week.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Saturday, May 30th is our high school graduation, time to be announced, but that's an exciting thing. Wednesday, June 3rd is the Asa Clark Middle School 8th grade promotion. And then Monday, June 8th, 6 p.m. business affairs, 7 p.m. regular board meeting. How about any legislative updates, Mike?
Well, we're watching with anticipation. What do we think, John, in like the next 10 days or so? We might, if something's gonna happen. With the surplus, we would anticipate, what'd you say, like April
2nd, I think.
April 2nd?
Something like that.
Is some kind of deadline. So we're really interested to see if something happens that's gonna have an impact on us. A lot of the discussion, and some of the agreements between like Robin Voss and Governor Evers would include $200 million more going into special ed, which will make a significant difference in us. The Democratic caucus has presented a different solution. There's some tension, I think, with the Senate and the Republican caucus, so we don't know what's going to happen. The three of us had a long conversation this morning about some contingency plans if that doesn't go through, because we'll have some decisions to make on probably further savings that will be necessary for next year. So that's the big stuff, is are they gonna be doing something with the surplus? There was a lot of kind of bills that were sent to the governor's desk, some things that got signed, some things on, grooming, communication with students after hours. There was one, and I include Jeff Barron's in right away because very specific things we have to put in place in handbooks, including consequences about any possible inappropriate communication with kids. We have to make sure, advisors and coaches, for example, who might not work here, we really don't want to be texting individual athletes and students. It's a very common practice everywhere. Club coaches, those kinds of things. It's a very easy way to communicate, but using a platform where we can archive and monitor all of that stuff is going to be really critical with the law that's been passed. It's something we already talk about, but we really have to make sure we're using appropriate tools for that. So those were the pieces that stand out. I don't know if you guys have anything.
No, other than, Robin Voss is stepping down, and so is the guy Lemieux.
LeMahieu and Voss are both retiring, and of course Tony Evers will be done this year too. So there'll definitely be some leadership change at the state.
Senator Hutton is also stepping down.
Senator
Yes.
Hutton is
But one of the people that's running out there is a graduate of Pewaukee High School, so.
Oh.
I can understand. What's that? What's his name again?
Justin
Roberts.
Dukes.
Roberts.
Oh yeah, Mike Roberts. Yep.
Roberts with that. So there's a couple dates you didn't mention, the May 11th and May 13th.
Oh yes. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Unless I hear different, the plan is for May 11th and May 13th to be our roundtable nights for strategic planning. So that'd be the same as last year, like 60 to 90 minute roundtable discussion to get that community input. I think you and I said 6.
Yeah.
You and I kind of agreed on 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any issues at this point with the 11th or the 13th?
No, they both work
Okay.
great.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Larry.
All right. Tammy, do we have any comments from citizens? No comments from citizens. All right, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.